Hey, everybody, welcome back to the podcast today. I love having return guests. We don't have a lot of them, so this is kind of special. We've got my friend Mark Batterson here. I wish you had a view of his office. We're audio, and you would know he is a man of books if you could see his office. Mark, thanks for joining us today. I appreciate you.
Yeah. Hey, William, always good to be with you. And I'm old school. I occasionally will read a book in digital format, but 99 out of 100 are books that sit on my shelves.
That's awesome. There's something about turning a page. I don't know. I guess I'm getting old, but and I don't go to sleep as well if I read right before bed and I'm looking at a screen. And honestly, if it's on a device, that's just a temptation for me to go ahead and check that message or the email or whatever the thing is. So
Yeah.
yeah,
This is crazy. I'm taking a shot in the dark here, but I listen to a lot of podcasts like everybody else, and I always wonder, am I going to get two or three things that are really unique that are going to add value? Could I just throw something out here
yeah.
right at the beginning? Um, People always ask me how I read or how do I remember what I read?
Mm.
And the truth is, like, I have a terrible memory for what I read, but I always remember what book it was in. And so I have a really simple system. A level one gets an underline in the book with a pen. A level two gets an asterisk in the margin. A level three gets circled. A level four is a top page leaf. And a level five, this is something that I want to make sure I don't lose, is a bottom leaf. And so what that allows me to do is I can go back and reread any book kind of level five in like 3 minutes, or level four in 5 minutes, or if it's a really good book, if it's a book you've written, William, then I can go back and I can read the whole thing in about 10, 12, 15 minutes.
I think we have a mutual friend in John Maxwell. Uh,
Yes.
John took me under his wing many, many years ago when I was a young pastor. And I remember one of the first times I spent time with him, he took me to his house there when he was still in Atlanta and into his study. And John has, oh my gosh, lots and lots of books. And
Yes.
I think he's donated his library now. I forget which college, but he used to have one of the largest collections of writings of Wesley. And so he was showing me all of his books, and he said, "You know the difference between a good preacher and a great preacher?" Okay, John, what is it? He said, "A good preacher can always find a good illustration. A great preacher can find that illustration 10 years later."
That is brilliant,
Can
right?
you, do you have a system? Love
Oh,
5 levels of reading. I love it. It's beautiful.
oh,
Then you can actually, okay, that was good this week, but when I got to go back, how do I remember what? That's
yeah.
beautiful. That's a
Oh,
great nugget,
that's,
Mark. Thanks for sharing
yeah.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Fun.
It'd be a good habit to start, which honestly, I'll just cut right to it. I am particularly drawn to your newest book, Do It for a Day, and it's about habits, which I've come to think, may just be the secret sauce. Uh, I look at the creation narrative. I'm Presbyterian, Mark, so this is where we're different, right? You grew up, I know, in the AG tradition, and I'll visit our friends in the AG church. In fact, the church that I think you grew up in, we helped find their senior pastor in the last several years. And I'll ask, so how long does service last? And they're like, "Well, till the Spirit's done." And I'm like, "Well, I grew up Presbyterian, and the Spirit moved for 58 minutes every Sunday, and that was it." So
Yeah, amazing.
it was, yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, so timely.
Well, I used to apologize for it, but then I realized, it's fine. I don't want to make people mad in the AG tradition. You have a wonderful, beautiful thing, but God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And what's the very next thing He did? He set up a calendar. He did. He set up patterns. He separated the
Yes.
day from the night. He set up patterns and
Yep.
habits. And
Yep.
God can do whatever He wants, but He's a God that brings order, and habits are ordered. So when I see a book, whether it's Atomic Habits or there's a bunch of them, my mind goes straight there. And I was so stoked to see that you were writing "Do It for a Day." And before I get too far into the subjects within the book, I'd just love to hear, what, even as much as you write, there's got to be some holy discontent that drives you to put something out there on paper. Tell us just kind of a snapshot of the book, and then why in the world would you spend time writing about it?
Yeah. The quick snapshot is show me your habits and I'll show you your future. You are what you repeatedly do.
Mm,
Destiny is not a mystery. Destiny is daily habits. And, I know a lot of the folks that listen to this podcast, William, they're leaders. And so leadership is self-leadership. That's where it starts. And self-leadership is all about daily habits. And so, I was with a little bit of fear and trepidation, to be honest, writing this particular book, kind of throwing my hat into the habit ring. But I felt the same way years ago when I wrote a book on prayer called The Circle Maker. I thought to myself, certainly the world doesn't need another book on prayer, but you know what? It did.
mm,
And I feel like what makes this unique, and we know each other well enough. I love the science of habit formation. I love neuroanatomy. I love psychology. I love all of it. But I think what's unique is that I add theology to the mix and
mm.
make no apologies for that. I think spiritual formation is habit formation, and habit formation is spiritual formation. And so really it's a book about, making and breaking the habits that are going to make or break us. And I better put the disclaimer out, because the subtitle is How to Make or Break Any Habit in 30 Days. Let's be honest. The estimates vary from 21 to 254 days to make or break a habit, but it depends on the person. It depends on the habit. So I'm not making a 30-day promise, but it will give you a running start to making or breaking that habit. And I think you and I both know that's the secret sauce right there. And it's why I love hacking other people's habits and kind of reverse engineering how they do what they do. And so there's quite a bit of that, certainly in the book.
Well, any significant change that I've had in life, other than Jesus meeting me and saying, "Hey, it's time to come home,"
Uh,
other than that one, was I needed to develop something. I'm just going to take one extra step each day. And I don't know about you. You're pastoring a church in DC. I was there last week, and I realized, different parts of the country are having different uh, uh, paces for coming out of the pandemic, right? So we're in Texas.
yeah.
It's a whole lot different, right? So you guys, I was almost like dropping back in time a few months to see, kind of just a different approach, not a right or wrong, but the people that I'm talking to, and I wonder if it's the same with your people. It's almost like we're coming out of this fog, right? And it's like the optimists that I know are like, this is awesome. It's like a blank canvas. I can start over, right? And I just wonder if this isn't a special time for saying, what a cool time to start some new habits or get rid of some old habits. And I don't know if you're feeling that as well or not, or if I'm just being speaking my own situation.
No, I think you're spot on. I think, with, and you have a unique pulse on the great resignation and the great relocation because of the waters that you swim in. So I won't even dare say a whole lot about that, but people are reinventing their lives right now from where they live to what they do. And part of that is, figuring out what are the habits that I need to make or break. And this is probably as good a time as any, to make or break that habit. And so I do think that this is a timely moment. I will make one little commentary. I almost call it the COVID cloud. And like you said, I travel enough that it's so different in different parts of the country. You're kind of alluding to the fact that DC would be, well, I'll put it this way. We went a year and 2 weeks where we could not gather.
Wow.
Um, and even now we're the restrictions are a little bit more just because of the nature of where we are. And again, not a commentary on it per se. It's just we are on one side of that bell curve. And what I've found is that no matter where you live, there are a lot of people that are languishing. That seems to be kind of one of the words of the year. It's not mental health, but it's not mental illness. It's kind of this no man's land. And I would just say to anybody that's out there that you feel like you're languishing a little bit, well, number one, welcome to the club, because I think all of us have experienced a little bit of that. It kind of feels like we're one tick off, some of us, or we feel like we're trying to find our way forward, but our rhythm has been disrupted a little bit. Well, I think those are the moments where it disrupts the status quo. And instead of going back to that old normal, finding a new normal. And, that could be something as simple as pace of life. I mean, average person spends 142 minutes on social media.
Mm.
That represents 15% of our waking hours.
Wow.
And so my immediate question would be, is that how we want to spend 15% of our lives?
Wow.
And maybe evaluating things like that, because William, isn't it interesting? Once something becomes second nature, we don't give it a second thought. We just become, we do it automatically. And part of what I'm trying to accomplish with the book is that there are moments where you need to deconstruct and reconstruct morning routines, or just the way that you're spending your time, your rhythms, your rituals. And the goal is to really help people re-examine and, in a sense, reinvent some of those habits.
I just don't know anybody that did a better job of the prodigal journey than me. I was so good at being bad. And one of my many bad habits was smoking. And I was 2.5 packs a day. I was 2 packs a day, and then decided if I went from Camel Lights to not light, I'd probably smoke less. It really doesn't work that way. It kind of went the other way. And I remember when I quit smoking, it was just like, what else does anyone do 50 times a day? Is there anything you do with 50 times? And at the time you'd be like, no. Well, now, heck yeah, I check my phone like 50 times every 2 hours. And it's just this bondage. And so to get to your book, what it made me think of was, you mentioned the Sermon on the Mount, and I thought, actually, the people that first heard that there's some congruencies here. They were living in a highly legislated, restrictive, you can't do this kind of culture or else. And that's what we've all been living in for the last 12, 18 months. Or if you've got an addiction like smoking or whatever the thing is. And then they heard words of liberation, but it was liberation to a discipline, right?
Yes.
So talk to me about how habit forming works with the words of Jesus, the Sermon on the Mount, the spiritual lessons that you're seeing.
Yeah, well, when we were in seminary, we would have heard it described as the 6 antitheses, right? That Jesus said 6 times, you have heard that it was said, but I tell you. But I would see it as 6 counter habits. Love your enemies, pray for those who persecute you, bless those who curse you, turn the other cheek, go the extra mile, give the shirt off your back. Those were counter habits. Jesus was habit switching. And the best way to break a bad habit is to create a good habit. It's almost this conundrum in psychology. It's called a double bind, that if I said to you, be spontaneous, well, now you can't be. I just put you in a double bind. So it's this idea that you don't stop sinning by not sinning. You need a vision that's bigger and better than the temptation, than the addiction. You have to cultivate these positive habits to break some of those bad habits. And so to me, the Sermon on the Mount is just brilliant when it comes to habit formation, that so much of it is Jesus reconditioning these Old Testament reflexes, that where it was an eye for an eye, and in a sense, interrupting that B.F. Skinner stimulus response reward cycle, and saying, hey, why don't we try something different? And so I play off of that a little bit in the book. And I just, the more I study science, the more amazed I am at Scripture, because we may have not had the terminology or the language, but so much of it is there thousands of years ago, and finally we're catching up with the genius of God's revealed Word. And certainly that Sermon on the Mount is kind of it's our center of gravity, those of us who follow Jesus. And it's such a great example of making and breaking habits.
So if I'm going to give you a day, I'm going to do it for a day. I'm going to not just take away, but I'm a bad habit, but I'm going to add some new ones. What would be like the ones that you're like, okay, this is some low hanging fruit. Everybody can grab hold of this, whether it's a time of day or a thing. Help me plug and play this for starting tomorrow morning after listening to this podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of simple plug and plays. One, gratitude journal. It's as simple as, writing down 2 or 3 things you're grateful for every single day. And what it does is it sanctifies that reticular activating system, the part of the brain that determines what we notice and what goes unnoticed. And there aren't any shortcuts. There aren't any cheat codes. There's just something significant about keeping a gratitude journal. Would be a simple kind of low hanging fruit, and it has the ability to shift your focus. I would say a daily Bible reading plan would be right up there, William, that you got to download the plan. It's almost like, well, this year I biked a century. That was kind of my annual challenge this year. Did a 100-mile bike ride. And you can't just go out, at least I can't, not at my age. I can't just go out and bike 100 miles. I would pull a hamstring or a quad pretty quick. So it was a 10-week training plan. And then you have to work the plan, especially on the days that you don't feel like it. In that same sense, I think a daily Bible reading plan is one thing that is a game changer. This is kind of fun. I keep in my Bible, and I know we're audio only, but I'll show it to you. I keep a little note card in my Bible, and this is what it looks like. It's an A.W. Tozer, and here's what it says: "Whatever keeps me from my Bible is my enemy, however harmless it may appear to me." I think, I talk a little bit about rule of life in the book and how to create a rule of life. But one great example of that would be you put different rules in place, like Bible before phone would be an example, or
Yes.
day off, phone off. And I know many of us, like Americans especially, like we have this allergic reaction to rules. But the truth is, there's no game that you can play. There's no sport that you can play that doesn't have rules. Rules are what allow you to play the game and enjoy the game. And so in the same sense, I think we've got to create a rule of life, things that give structure, give boundary, give priorities to our lives, and then begin to put some of those simple habits into practice.
I'm sure you're familiar with John Milton, Paradise Lost. In hell, the way the devil maintained control was by convincing everyone they could do whatever they wanted. And it's what was called pandemonium, devils everywhere. And so it was absolute pure democracy. Everybody's got to vote, everybody does. And that meant that nobody was in control. There was no order at all. And and for me, now help me, counsel me for a little session. You can send me a bill, but I think that maybe I'm just simple-minded, but I think what I do very first in the morning somehow sets a tone. And I don't know, in your research, you've looked at a lot of science. Am I crazy, or is that just my habit, or what? I mean, I think there's a principle of first things that boils down to how I spend the first words of my mouth every day.
Yes.
Tell me what you think about that.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is the Shema, this prayer in Deuteronomy 6:4. "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one." A practicing Orthodox Jew would be their first words in the morning and their last words at night. It would be
Wow.
their first thought in the morning, their last thought at night. Every day was bookended by this simple prayer where they reaffirm God's rule in their life. I think you are spot on. This is where many of us, what we do is we set our alarm clock to the last second possible to get up, get in a quick shower, get a quick breakfast, say a quick hello to our spouse or kids, and then drive really quick to work. Like everything is fast. Everything has to be fast. And if we don't hit our mark, we're going to be late. I just don't think that that's the best way to start the day. And so, and I'm not here to beat anybody up, especially, hey, if you have young children, I want to give a special dispensation right now because sometimes just getting your kids clothed and out the door, you just won the day, my friend. So don't, let's have a dose of reality here. But I think in habit formation, kind of two principles. One is implementation intention. You have to determine when and where you're going to do something. Otherwise, it's just left to chance and it's probably not going to happen. The second thing is a commitment device. And this is so interesting. Like, for example, I leveraged my 35th birthday as a deadline to write my first book. And it was a commitment device that I made to myself. Well, I would argue that the old-fashioned alarm clock is one of the best commitment devices in the world. And don't just set up to determine when you're going to get up. We just did a Do It for a Day series with our church, William. And so I challenge everybody to pick a habit, any habit, and then put it into practice for 30 days. So for my wife and I, it was kneeling at night and praying for our kids. Well,
Wow.
guess what? I forgot a few nights, but my wife's alarm saved the day because she set it for 9 p.m. And so you've got to find mechanisms until it really becomes ingrained as a habit. You got to find mechanisms to sort of help yourself. And one of the ways to do that is just the accountability of other people, right? Like just inviting people in your life to help hold your feet to the fire a little bit. And so all of that kind of mixed together, I think puts us in a good position to make or break those habits.
Well, and for me, we have a high school senior boy right now. He's a good guy, but his frontal cortex just is not developed. Like it's just biologically not. It's not his fault, but man, you would think getting out of bed would be the thing he could do. And I can't do it, Dad. Well, set your alarm. I did, but I just can't get up. I'm like, okay, let me tell you what I had to do when I was your age. I had it was a awful, you remember the LED clocks that all it was a red number. Like the most, and it was a Pittsburgh Steelers football helmet. I have no idea why. And it was nastiest alarm clock ever. I mean, it's just like DEFCON 5 kind of sound coming out of it, right? And I had to put it on the other side of my bedroom. So why don't you just put it on the other side of your bedroom, Will? And he said, but then I can't hit snooze. I'm like, exactly. So
that is classic.
You're dense like me.
This is so funny. I think we may be giving away our age here. That there was a day when alarm clocks were just alarm clocks. And my record in college, William, when I was at the University of Chicago, as a freshman, I once hit my snooze. I had to go back and do the math. I once hit my snooze button 19 times. I don't know if anybody else out there, maybe someone can top that, but that's 19 times every 9 minutes. It's kind of ridiculous.
Well, most tools of the devil are inventions that come right after a tool of the Lord was invented. The alarm clock is a tool of the Lord. The snooze button is a tool of the devil. It's good for nothing. You don't get quality sleep in 7 minutes. Are you kidding me? You're not going to sleep anymore.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think that, if you're out there listening today, this is the season for habits. Some of you are coming out of COVID-19. You're more fit than you've ever been because you're like, hey, man, life's changing. I got to buckle down. But most of us are coming out of COVID-19 with an extra 19, right? Or most of us are coming out, come on, somebody knows, and we're not going to name names, right? But most of us got out of our normal habits for like a year and a half. And I don't know that we'll ever have a chance like this to say the whole world is hitting reset. And if I could encourage you to get your mind around a subject, it would be, how do habits happen? And if there's a book right now that I'd point you to just say, just give it a try. Just do it for a day, from Mark. So Mark, what you're the king of not just a book, but equipping us with resources as well. So where can people learn more about your book and resources that might come along that?
Yeah, we've got some free downloads, some freebies at markbatterson.com that would go along with the book. And I think I don't want this to be too tangential, but I don't want to lose this thought either, because we're trying to add value to listeners' lives. So the one thing I would say is, if you do this by yourself, it'll be twice as hard as doing it with someone else. By the way, game changer for me, when I went through my life goals, 100 life goals, and for what it's worth, those 100 life goals and 7 steps to setting life goals would be available on my website as one of those free downloads. The key for me was when I added a relational element. Why would I want to run a triathlon when I could do it with my 13-year-old son and cross the finish line together? And that was a few years ago. He's a few years older now, but as an example, or hiking the Grand Canyon rim to rim as a rite of passage, or attempting the Escape from Alcatraz swim with my daughter. Like all of these things, doing these things together. And I think is there's a supernatural synergy that happens when we go after these things together. And so just a little word of exhortation there that hopefully doesn't get us too far off track.
No, it's always better together, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. First thing the Lord cursed. You ever think about this? The power of first things. First time you read something in the Bible, what's the first thing God cursed? It is not good that man be left alone.
It is not, is it?
Yeah. I mean, it took the pandemic for me to realize he cursed people being alone before sin entered the world.
Wow. You just preached an entire sermon in one sentence. The theology of that had never struck me quite. I playfully would include that when I'm officiating a wedding. I'll playfully, say it's not good but wow, because I think you're striking at the heart of something here, that there's so much loneliness.
There is.
But I also think, it's not just about sitting around and singing Kumbaya, right, William? I think
it's driving each other rim to rim across the Grand Canyon.
Like, come on, let's be on mission. It's co-mission. Let's go after these goals. Let's cultivate these spiritual habits together. So that's awesome.
That's good, man. Well, I hope that you will go out, listeners, and not just order 1 copy, but 2. And man, if you need to go to markbatterson.com and look at just the resources that are there, and get to know some of the things that are going on through his church. Mark, it is such a joy to be with you. Frankly, I'm hoping for a little better outcome than the last time we were together. The last time we were together, shortly afterward, your team beat mine in the World Series, and we're recording this right before that might happen again with a different team. So we'll.
Yeah, well, listen, William, on the positive side, and you have to your team has to make up a little bit of ground, but at least your team is in it again this year. So there you go.
Well, God bless you, man. I'm so thankful for your work and your ministry, and I really appreciate you making time for us and our listeners.
Hey, thanks, William. God bless.